finally over, huh? Here, take this. Take what? Divorce papers. Listen, if you act like a boss just because you had a baby, I'll divorce you right away. You'll be in trouble if I divorce you, right? With no sympathy for me, he looked at me like I was an idiot and showed me the divorce papers that he had filled out and signed. Fine, let's divorce. My husband snickered when he saw me readily agree to the divorce and sign the divorce papers on the spot. I can't let such a man hold my newborn child. Because this child is. I'm Helen Farah, married to Hans 3 years ago. We both wanted to have children as soon as we got married, but it was difficult to bear. We tried everything, including timing and hoping for supplements, but it did not success. At first, my husband was encouraging, saying it's okay. But as time passed, his attitude changed. He began to click his tongue at me when he saw me depressed every time I got my period. Still in our 20s, we were not aggressive in our infertility treatment and did not make it clear which was the cause. As Hans' attitude worsened, I lost the energy to bring it up. Hey, you're a housewife. Why can't you get pregnant? I work so much and you don't have any value as a woman. I was speechless. This situation was what we had decided together, but now, what could I do? I truly wanted a child. But did I really want a child with him? I couldn't even ask Hans that. Our nights became obligatory, mechanical. I was nearing my limit in a loveless life. Still, I had high hopes at the time. Maybe having a child would make Hans kind again. Then, finally, I got pregnant with our first child. Seeing the positive result on the pregnancy test, I was speechless with shock. I couldn't wait for Hans to come home, so I sent him a photo. Hans, I'm pregnant. But his response wasn't what I expected. He read the message but didn't reply. Maybe he was busy at work. But he could have at least said something. Morning passed, then afternoon and night. I greeted Hans with a forced smile. Welcome home. Did you see the photo? I saw it. This is real, you know, this. I showed him the test. The 2 distinct lines didn't seem to make him happy. Congratulations. I'm tired today. He didn't even look at me and went inside. I stood there, dumbfounded. My faint hope of him becoming kinder was shattered. A joyous announcement turned into a night of tears. Soon after, the dreaded morning sickness hit. Scent sensitivity, vomiting, and other issues meant I couldn't do household chores. I consulted with Hans and decided to return to my parents' home. Morning sickness is tough. But seeing the baby on the ultrasound at the clinic made me happy, so I contacted my husband daily. Thank you for your hard work. I saw the baby at the hospital today. They said everything was fine. Oh, really? That's nice. His voice always sounded distracted, uninterested. It was always like that. I felt crushed but continued to ignore how I felt, and I kept hoping. Right now, he's not by my side, and my belly isn't big yet. Maybe when I start looking more pregnant, he'll feel like a dad and change his attitude. I had to cling to that hope, otherwise I couldn't cope with the unstable days. I couldn't bring myself to talk about Hans's behavior with my parents, so I kept it all to myself. By the time the morning sickness was almost over, he was not answering the phone properly, but I still called him every day without fail. One Sunday afternoon, Hans finally answered. What? I'm busy right now. As I was about to say wait, I froze at another voice in the background. A woman's voice. I wanted to believe it was from the news or a drama, but it felt off. Are you with someone? I'm at work. Let's talk later. The call ended abruptly. I couldn't believe it and finally gave up my hopes. One day, encouraged by my mom, I went for a walk to clear my head and get some exercise. Maybe I was looking really terrible. My hair and skin were in bad shape, but the fresh air and sunshine felt good. For a moment, I imagined going out with my baby, and my heart felt light. Passing by a local bakery, someone called out from behind. Hey Helen. I turned to see a man about my age in a suit. His face brightened as he saw me. I knew it. You're Helen, right? Remember me? I'm Mark. Mark. Were we in the same class? I remembered him, and we both smiled. Mark was a college classmate. We had different majors but often worked together on common subjects, did projects, and hung out with friends. We lost touch after graduation, but I never thought he'd be back in town. It's been a while. Are you working now? Yeah, I became a lawyer. Still a newbie, but I'm running around like this. Well. What about you, Helen? Visiting home? You look a bit pale. He noticed, and I hesitated to answer. Seeing this, Mark suggested grabbing a coffee nearby. I ordered a hot cocoa and shared my current situation. I married after graduation and was now pregnant. With the morning sickness, I couldn't manage housework, so I left Hans at our home and came back to visit. When our drinks arrived, I decided to bite the bullet and talk about it. It's embarrassing to say this suddenly, but I think my husband might be cheating. Really? Any evidence or something that made you notice? No evidence yet, but now it feels like I'm living alone. He doesn't answer calls, and when he does, I think I hear another woman's voice. I talked through my tears, forgetting even my cocoa. I felt embarrassed, wanting to blame it all on pregnancy hormones. Mark stayed calm as he listened. Then he said, looking at me straight, "I can help. Not just as a lawyer, but as a friend too." His words were a lifeline to me, trapped in my situation. This time, I just broke down and cried. I was aware of the looks from the clerk and others, but I couldn't stop my tears at Mark's words saying it's okay. Thus, in addition to my parents, I gained a strong, lifelong confidant. First, he introduced me to a detective agency. Understanding the current situation is crucial, he said. The results were clear: infidelity. The other woman was the daughter of a business associate. Hans took advantage of my absence and met frequently with her, without any caution. Evidence was easy to gather. When my morning sickness ceased and I was nearing my stable period, Mark and I discussed more. Divorce was inevitable. I couldn't live with Hans anymore. But I decided not to abort the child. For now, my priority was to safely give birth, with divorce and alimony to be dealt with later. Thinking about registry and other formalities, moving around in my pregnant state seemed hard. Despite the pain of morning sickness, I'm a mother now. My unborn child depended on me. I must stand firm here. I learned the hard way about protecting myself without relying on a partner, but it made me stronger. Following my parents' advice, I returned home mid-pregnancy. There was not a trace of happiness on Hans' face when he welcomed me. He was indifferent even to my growing belly. His verbal abuse, which started even before pregnancy, got worse. What's with that dazed walking? Can you even be a good mother? Don't think that just because your belly is getting bigger, it means I'm going to be nice to you. Do you think you deserve to be cared for just because you finally fulfilled your duty as a woman? If you're back, you should still do your job as a housewife. I didn't know if he would even understand anything I said. He had changed so much since we got married. I secretly recorded his rants on my phone and played them for Mark, who was speechless. Was he like this since you got married? No. It started gradually when we couldn't have a child. I couldn't fully comprehend the reason. Maybe his heart had moved on to the other woman, and he wanted to degrade me further. I felt no more affection for the man I was about to divorce. Still, it hurt. Being able to talk about these abusive words and actions with Mark, who collected evidence of infidelity and domestic violence, was a relief. I had discussed future plans with my parents, but Mark also listened as a professional and a friend. His presence was a huge support in my first childbirth, filled with anxiety. Then I entered the last month of pregnancy, and the day of delivery arrived. I started labor without Hans' help and took a taxi to the hospital. In the labor room, my parents were my only support. And then, "Mom, you did great. It's a healthy baby girl." I was able to give birth safely. It took some time, but the progress afterwards was also good. My parents' cheeks loosened with the birth of their grandchild. Seeing their expressions, I truly felt glad I had the baby. In the hospital room, I took a moment to rest, enduring the postpartum fatigue and pain, and spent some calm time until Hans arrived. Finally, it's done. Here you go. What's this? Divorce papers. Listen, if you act like a boss just because you had a baby, I'll divorce you right away. You'll be in trouble if I divorce you, right? I have my responsibilities too, so depending on your attitude, I might stay. With no sympathy for me, he looked at me like I was an idiot and showed me the divorce papers that he had filled out and signed. Instead of showing any concern or even looking at the child, he always tried to assert his dominance. Feeling irritated from the pain, I decided to make my farts clear. Fine, let's divorce. As I firmly stated that, Hans went silent for a moment. His eyes widened in shock. No. What are you going to do with the child if we get divorced? You're going to raise her all by yourself. You're a housewife, there's no way you can do it. Thanks for your concern, but I'll be fine. I'm going back to my parents' house as soon as I'm discharged. My stuff's already been sent there. I'll file the divorce papers on the way. I snatched the divorce paper from Hans' hand. Pulling a table closer, I quickly filled out and signed my part. How convenient that his part was already completed. Continuing in that vein, I presented evidence of his infidelity. I could sense Hans' face turning pale. Wait a minute. No, it's just a joke. The divorce paper was just for show. His excuse was cut off by a knock. Turning around, Hans muttered, "Who are you?" "Nice to meet you." "Are you Helen's husband?" "I am her lawyer." "A lawyer?" Mark, dressed in a crisp suit. As soon as Hans received the business card, who kept glancing at me and Mark alternately. Just in time. "I have a favor to ask. Please handle this." I quickly handed the divorce paper to Mark. "Hans, this man is my lawyer. So, from now on, you'll need to speak through him." "Talk about what?" "Can't stand a wife as cheeky as me, right?" Faced with a side of me he'd never seen before, Hans was taken aback. Even I was surprised at how strong I could be in this state. Nodding to Mark, we moved on to the specifics. Mark explained matter-of-factly about the evidence of infidelity and emotional abuse, the possibility of a lawsuit if there was no agreement on alimony or discussion. Abuse. The one who's uncomfortable here is me. Despite his retort, his tone had significantly weakened. Realizing he couldn't be assertive in front of a lawyer, Hans shrugged and left the hospital room. It took some time, but the divorce was finalized without issue. Through Mark, I was able to contact the woman Hans had an affair with. According to what we were told, they met at a business partner's anniversary party. Whatever it was, Hans was the first one to make a fierce attack, saying he had fallen in love with her at first sight. Apparently, Hans was a high-performing salesman, and they quickly developed a relationship. The party coincided with a time when Hans was becoming frustrated with inability to have children. I wonder if he was planning to divorce me someday, making me think that I was the reason we couldn't have children. But divorcing would also tarnish his reputation. Maybe Hans was planning to keep taking out his frustrations on me. His boss and the entire company he worked for soon found out about the affair. Given the circumstances, even if he was transferred far away, it wouldn't be comfortable for him. Hans decided to resign on his own terms. As for me, I'm in the midst of the challenges of first-time parenting. A few months in, and the baby is getting chubbier and even more adorable. She's become such a beloved presence that I can almost forget her father is Hans. I don't feel lonely after the divorce, because Mark has become my new partner. Mark, who spent a lot of time with me since our college days, apparently couldn't hide his feelings for me after graduation. Our re-encounter, and then the unexpected consultation about the affair and divorce, made his feelings grow. But back then, I was married and pregnant. Responding to his feelings would have been an outright affair. Though I had long been fed up with Hans, I was already drawn to Mark, but I decided not to get carried away. I told him I'd think about it seriously after giving birth and completing the divorce. When I learned of Mark's feelings, I was truly happy. Even with a child from such a husband, Mark said he wanted to raise her as his own. I think that's something not easily said without serious commitment. Speaking of commitment, I realized after a while postpartum how truly tired I was, emotionally, from heading towards divorce. There were things to say, and things to keep silent about, discerning between them. Like in the hospital room. If I had carelessly talked about Mark to Hans, he could have accused me of having an affair too. In the hospital, we were strictly lawyer and client. I had no choice but to say I could manage the baby alone. Even without saying anything, it seemed likely to raise suspicions, but Mark handled the procedures without giving Hans any chance. Thus, there was absolutely no infidelity between me and Mark. Back then, he was helping me as a friend and as a lawyer. Even if it had ended there, he would have been a great support. One autumn day, I took my daughter for a walk. In the crisp autumn air, she was sleeping soundly in her stroller. Her peaceful sleeping face made me smile unwittingly. "Helen, sorry to keep you waiting." Resting on a park bench, Mark came over. He was dressed in a suit, slightly different from his work attire. Today was the day Mark was going to meet my parents. Maybe that's why he seemed a bit nervous. "It's a beautiful day. I'm sure it'll go well." "Yay." But I'm still a bit nervous. My parents knew about Mark, but this was the first time they were meeting face to face. We waited a while after the divorce to show our sincerity. On dates like these, I bring my daughter along for Mark to spend as much time with her as possible. To him, she's become an irresistibly adorable presence, having seen her since she was a newborn. I wonder if we could have a child together someday. It won't be easy, but it would make me happy. Being outside with my daughter, I remember the moment Mark approached me. I never imagined him becoming part of such daydreams. "Mark, let's go." "Yay, let's go." We got up from the bench. And then, my daughter woke up. "Good morning," we both said, peering at her face. A sweet smile bloomed.